The old stone gates loomed, softened by a thick drapery of ivy, their wrought iron scrollwork swallowed by the encroaching foliage. A shiver, not entirely from the crisp autumn air, traced its way down Ilara's spine as the Land Rover crunched over the gravel path. This was Blackwood Manor, her new commission, a place whispered about in hushed tones among the design elite, a forgotten jewel, an impossible challenge. And now, her sanctuary for the next few months, perhaps longer. The drive wound through a tunnel of ancient oaks, their branches gnarled like arthritic fingers, their leaves a riot of gold and burnt umber that danced in the late afternoon sun. The air here was different, heavier, laden with the scent of damp earth, decaying leaves and something else, something wild and untamed, like a forgotten memory. Ilara gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white. She was a landscape architect, accustomed to imposing order on chaos, coaxing beauty from barren ground. But this felt less like a project and more like an initiation. The house itself emerged from the woodland's embrace like a slumbering beast, a formidable Jacobean edifice of dark grey stone, its mullioned windows like watchful eyes. It was grand, austere, and undeniably beautiful, but with a palpable sense of solitude that clung to its very walls. No perfectly manicured lawns, no neat rose beds. Instead, a wilderness pressed close, an echo of the ancient forest that surrounded it. She parked the car, its engine ticking softly in the sudden quiet. The silence was profound, broken only by the rustle of leaves and the distant cry of a hawk. Stepping out, Ilara stretched, her muscles stiff from the long drive. She wore her practical work attire, sturdy boots, tailored trousers, a cashmere jumper the color of moss. But a subtle tremor ran through her. This was more than just a job, it was an escape, a chance to lose herself in something vast and demanding, to quiet the insistent whispers of a life she'd left behind. As she walked towards the heavy oak front door, a figure emerged from the shadows of the house, startling her. He was tall, impossibly so, framed against the ancient stone. Dark hair, slightly too long, fell across a high forehead. His clothes, though simple, dark trousers, a charcoal jumper, seemed to drape over an athletic frame, hinting at quiet strength. His face was rugged, carved with sharp angles and shadowed hollows, and his eyes were the color of deep moss, intense and unblinking, as they fixed on her. "Miss Vance?" His voice was a low rumble, resonant, carrying the subtle timbre of old wood, and the earth itself. It was the kind of voice that seemed to vibrate in her bones. "Mr. Thorne." Ilara managed, her own voice feeling thin and reedy in comparison. She'd only spoken to him on the phone, a series of brief, almost curt, professional exchanges. He was the owner of Blackwood, the man who had inexplicably chosen her, a relatively new name in the high-end landscape design world, for this monumental task. He nodded, a barely perceptible dip of his head. "Welcome to Blackwood." There was no warmth in his greeting, no welcoming smile. Just a stark, direct appraisal that made her feel both intensely seen and utterly exposed. "Thank you," she replied, trying to project a confidence she didn't quite feel under his unwavering gaze. "It's quite a place." "It is," he agreed, his eyes sweeping over the wild, overgrown gardens that sprawled around them. "And you're here to tame it." The word, tame, felt wrong. Like trying to cage a storm. "To understand it," Ilara corrected gently, "and to reveal its hidden beauty." A flicker, something unreadable, passed through his dark green eyes. "An ambitious undertaking." "I believe in ambition," she said, meeting his gaze directly. She refused to be intimidated. She'd come too far for that. He turned, leading the way towards the door without another word. Ilara followed, acutely aware of the powerful breadth of his shoulders, the easy grace of his stride. He moved like a predator, silent and self-assured. Inside, the house was a labyrinth of dim corridors and vast, echoing rooms. The air was cool, carrying the scent of beeswax, old books, and something indefinable, ancient. Dust motes danced in the shafts of light that pierced the gloom from tall leaded windows. Thorne led her to a wing of the house dedicated to guest accommodation. a suite of rooms overlooking a particularly wild part of the garden. "Your quarters," he announced, gesturing to a heavy wooden door. "I trust they'll be adequate. Meals will be taken in the main dining room, or you may request trays here. There's a kitchen if you prefer to prepare your own." Alara stepped inside. The room was grand, with a four-poster bed, a roaring fire in the hearth, and a large sash window looking out onto what promised to be a spectacular, if unruly, view. A desk was set up with a map of the estate, already marked with topography. He'd clearly anticipated her need. "They're more than adequate, Mr. Thorne, thank you." She turned to face him, finding him still standing in the doorway, his presence filling the space. The air crackled between them. "Whis," he corrected, his voice softer this time, almost a whisper. "Please, I'm sure you'll find the staff helpful. Mrs. Gable manages the house and Thomas oversees the grounds." "Whis," she repeated, the name tasting foreign and intriguing on her tongue. "And you may call me Alara." He inclined his head again, a faint shadow of something that might have been a smile playing around the corners of his mouth. Then, as abruptly as he had appeared, he turned and was gone, leaving her alone in the immense silence of the room. Alara unpacked quickly, her mind already racing with plans, with the vastness of the task ahead. But beneath the professional excitement, a different kind of current hummed. Whis Thorne. He was not what she had expected. Remote, yes, but with an intensity that pulled at something deep within her. After a quick, solitary meal of surprisingly delicious lamb stew, brought to her room by a kindly white-haired woman she presumed was Mrs. Gable, Alara donned a thick jacket and her boots. She couldn't wait until morning. She needed to see it, feel it, understand its pulse. The gardens at dusk were a chiaroscuro masterpiece. Shadows lengthened, distorting familiar shapes into monstrous forms. The air grew colder, carrying with it the sharp scent of pine needles and the sweet, intoxicating perfume of night-blooming jasmine from a sheltered wall. Alara followed a barely discernible path, pushing aside thorny brambles, her boots sinking into the soft, mossy earth. She found herself in what must have once been a formal parterre, now entirely consumed by nature. Statues, green with age, peered out from tangled thickets. A dry fountain, its basin cracked, lay at the heart of it all. Yet, even in its decay, its inherent beauty was undeniable. The bones of a magnificent design were still there, waiting to be uncovered. A faint sound, like a whisper, caught her attention. A rustle in the ancient yew hedge that formed a towering wall around the parterre. Alara paused, listening. The wind picked up, sighing through the trees, making the leaves dance. She shook her head. Just the wind. Her imagination, always vivid, was running wild in this atmospheric place. She spent the next few days in a tireless exploration of Blackwood's grounds. She walked for miles, mapping, sketching, absorbing. She discovered a hidden walled garden, bursting with heritage roses gone wild, their petals bruised and fragrant. She found a neglected orchard, its ancient apple trees heavy with fruit. A winding stream, its banks overgrown with ferns, led to a small, secluded lake, its surface reflecting the moody autumn sky. Everywhere she went, she felt a sense of history, of lives lived, and secrets kept. The very stones seemed to hum with stories. And she felt watched. Not stalked, but observed. Sometimes, she would catch a glimpse of Whis in the distance, a dark figure against the backdrop of the sprawling estate, moving with purpose, or simply standing, gazing out across his domain. He was a silent sentinel, a guardian of Blackwood's secrets. Their interactions remained brief, always professional. He would appear unexpectedly just as she was making a critical observation, or sketching a particularly interesting specimen. "You have a good eye," he'd commented once, watching her meticulously draw the intricate pattern of a moss-covered stone wall. "It's a beautiful wall," she'd replied, not looking up, her charcoal gliding over the paper. "The lichen patterns are exquisite." He'd said nothing more, just lingered for a moment, his presence a warm weight beside her, before melting back into the shadows. Another evening she was in the ancient conservatory, a breathtaking structure of iron and glass, now choked with exotic plants, run rampant. The air was thick, humid, smelling of damp earth and orchids. She was tracing the delicate pattern of a giant fern frond, lost in thought, when she heard his voice, close behind her. "The orchids here are rare. My grandmother cultivated them." Elara turned, startled. He was standing just inches away, so close she could feel the faint warmth radiating from his body. His eyes, usually so guarded, held a hint of something softer, a touch of melancholy. "They're magnificent," she breathed, her gaze sweeping over the vibrant blooms. They must have been her passion. "One of them," he murmured, his eyes fixed not on the orchids, but on her. The light from the setting sun, filtered through the grimy glass, caught the planes of his face, softening the harsh lines, making him appear almost approachable. A sudden electric awareness sparked between them. The air in the conservatory, already heavy, seemed to thicken, charged with unspoken possibility. Elara's breath caught in her throat. She could feel the heat of his gaze, a tangible caress that sent a shiver through her. She felt a strange pull, an undeniable magnetism that was both thrilling and terrifying. "They need a lot of light," she managed, tearing her gaze away from his, focusing on the vibrant petals of a nearby orchid. Her heart hammered against her ribs. "They do," he agreed, his voice a low thrum. "And care. Constant, devoted care." His words, simple as they were, resonated with a deeper meaning. She felt as though he wasn't just talking about the orchids. She felt a blush creep up her neck, a telltale flush that she hoped the dim light would obscure. He stepped back then, breaking the spell, and the air around her suddenly felt cold. "Dinner will be served in an hour. I expect you'll join me tonight." It wasn't a question, more an expectation. Elara nodded, unable to speak, her mind still reeling from the sudden, intense proximity. He turned and left, leaving her alone once more, surrounded by the silent, blooming beauty of the conservatory, her senses heightened, her body tingling. That evening, Elara took extra care with her appearance. She chose a dress of deep forest green silk, its simple lines flattering her figure without being ostentatious. She tied her dark hair back with a silken ribbon, leaving a few tendrils to frame her face. She felt a nervous flutter in her stomach as she descended the grand staircase, the scent of polished wood and old tapestry filling her nostrils. Whis was already in the dining room, standing by the massive stone fireplace, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. He had changed into a dark suit, impeccably tailored, which only amplified his formidable presence. He looked even more imposing, more dangerously attractive than usual. He turned as she entered, and his eyes, those intense moss-green eyes, swept over her, a slow, deliberate appraisal that made her skin prickle. A subtle, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. "You look elegant, Elara." His voice was a soft murmur, rich and deep. "Thank you, Whis," she replied, feeling a blush warm her cheeks. "You do too." He gestured to the table set for two, gleaming with candlelight and polished silver. The fire crackled invitingly, casting dancing shadows on the high walls. Mrs. Gable served them a delicate consommé, followed by roasted pheasant and seasonal vegetables. The meal was exquisite, the conversation sparse, yet punctuated by moments of intense unspoken communication. Whis spoke little, mostly about the history of Blackwood, its previous owners, the challenges of maintaining such an ancient estate. Elara found herself drawn to the quiet passion in his voice when he spoke of the land, the way his eyes would soften. She spoke of her vision for the gardens, her philosophy of respecting the existing landscape, of uncovering its inherent narratives. He listened intently, his gaze never leaving her face. At one point, as she was describing a particularly overgrown section near the lake, where she envisioned a wild meadow of native flowers, he reached across the table and picked up her hand. His touch was unexpected, a jolt of pure electricity that shot straight up her arm. His thumb brushed lightly over her knuckles, a feather-light caress that sent shivers through her. "You speak of the land as if it were alive," he said, his voice a low rumble, his eyes locked with hers. Elara felt her breath catch. His touch was intoxicating, a forbidden indulgence. "It is," she whispered, her voice barely audible. It breathes. It remembers. His thumb continued its slow, hypnotic caress, his fingers warm and strong around hers. The candlelight flickered, casting their joined hands in a golden glow. The air was thick with unspoken desires, with a tension that was almost unbearable. Her pulse pounded in her ears, mirroring the frantic beat of her heart. "And what does Blackwood whisper to you, Ilara?" he asked, his voice even lower now, intimate, as if sharing a profound secret. Her gaze was trapped by his, lost in the depth of his green eyes. "Secrets," she breathed, her voice trembling slightly. "And promises." His lips curved into a slow, tantalizing smile. A genuine smile that transformed his rugged face, making him utterly captivating. "Promises of beauty," she clarified, pulling her hand away gently, the loss of his touch a cold ache. She needed to regain her composure, to put some distance between them, both physically and emotionally. This was her client. This was a professional engagement. He merely watched her, his smile lingering, a knowing glint in his eyes. He understood. He saw her, truly saw her, beneath the professional veneer. And that was both thrilling and terrifying. The rest of the dinner passed in a haze. Ilara was acutely aware of his every movement, every subtle shift in his expression. She felt a burning curiosity about him, a desire to peel back the layers of his quiet reserve, to discover the man beneath. Later, as she lay in the vast four-poster bed, the fire a dying glow in the hearth, Ilara couldn't sleep. The image of his hand on hers, the warmth, the soft caress of his thumb, replayed in her mind. His voice, asking what Blackwood whispered to her, echoed in the quiet darkness. She rose and walked to the window, pushing aside the heavy velvet curtains. The moon, almost full, cast a silvery sheen over the sprawling gardens. The ancient trees stood like sentinels, their branches swaying gently in the night breeze. From somewhere in the distance, an owl hooted, a mournful, haunting sound. She imagined him in his own room, perhaps looking out at the same moonlit landscape. What did Blackwood whisper to him? What secrets did he hold? She felt a yearning, a deep, resonant ache to know. To understand the man who owned this magnificent, mysterious place, and who had, with a single touch, ignited a spark within her that threatened to consume her. The whispers of Blackwood were no longer just the rustling leaves or the sighing wind. They were the echoes of his voice, the memory of his touch, the unspoken desires that now pulsed through her veins, promising a future she hadn't dared to dream of. And she knew, with a certainty that thrilled and terrified her, that her journey at Blackwood had only just begun. The morning light, filtered through the ancient mullioned windows of her bedchamber, painted the room in hues of soft gold and grey. She lay, suspended between sleep and waking, the imprint of his touch still a vivid, fiery brand on her skin. It wasn't just the memory of his fingers on her wrist, but the echoes of his gaze, the low thrum of his voice, the very air that had vibrated with his presence. Blackwood, which had felt like a grand silent sentinel upon her arrival, now pulsed with an unseen energy, a current that had flowed from him, through her, and into the very foundations of the estate. She stretched, her muscles languid, feeling a new kind of vitality coursing through her. The ordinary sensations of awakening, the crisp coolness of the linen sheets, the faint scent of lavender and old wood that clung to the room, were sharpened, intensified. Her senses, once perhaps a little dulled by the mundane, now felt exquisitely attuned, as if a veil had been lifted. She rose and moved to the window, pushing aside the heavy velvet drapes. Below, the formal gardens lay shrouded in a gentle morning mist, the intricate patterns of the hedges and flower beds just beginning to emerge. Beyond them, the darker, untamed woods stretched, vast and mysterious, beckoning. The woods. His domain, perhaps. The thought sent a delicious shiver down her spine. She dressed with a deliberation she hadn't possessed before, choosing a simple but elegant gown of forest green silk that seemed to perfectly complement the wild beauty outside. As she brushed her hair, watching her reflection, she noticed a subtle change in her own eyes. a deeper intensity, a nascent spark of adventure and desire she hadn't recognized before. She felt like a new person on the cusp of a profound discovery, not just about Blackwood, but about herself. Breakfast in the grand dining hall was a solitary affair, yet she didn't feel alone. The air hummed with anticipation. Each sip of tea, each bite of toast was imbued with the promise of what the day might hold. After, unable to contain her restlessness, she decided to explore. The house itself was a labyrinth of wonders, but it was the outdoors that truly called to her. She stepped out onto the gravel path, inhaling the damp, earthy scent of the morning. The formal gardens were a testament to centuries of meticulous care, a symphony of sculpted topiary, vibrant roses, and ancient stone fountains. She wandered through them, her fingers trailing over the cool petals, her mind still replaying the previous evening. She found herself drawn to a hidden gate in the garden wall, a moss-covered archway that promised passage into the wilder parts of the estate. It felt like a threshold, a crossing into a different realm. Beyond the gate the path narrowed, winding through a dense copse of trees. The air grew cooler, heavier, imbued with the scent of pine and damp earth. The sunlight dappled through the canopy, creating shifting patterns of light and shadow on the forest floor. Here, the whispers of Blackwood were louder, more insistent. They spoke of ancient secrets, of hidden glades, of a wild, untamed beauty that mirrored the stirring within her own heart. She walked deeper, her senses alive, acutely aware of every rustle of leaves, every bird call, every creak of ancient timber. It felt as though the very woods were watching her, welcoming her. And then she saw him. He was standing by a clearing, near a small crystalline stream that chuckled over smooth stones. His back was to her, his tall, lean frame silhouetted against the dappled light. He wore dark, practical clothing that seemed to blend seamlessly with the forest, a stark contrast to the formal attire of the previous night, yet no less commanding. His hair, dark as raven's wing, caught the light, revealing threads of deep auburn. He was studying something on the ground, his posture one of intense focus, his shoulders broad and powerful. She stopped, hidden by a cluster of ancient ferns, a breath catching in her throat. She found herself simply watching him, an inexplicable hunger stirring within her. There was an inherent grace in his stillness, a primal strength that resonated with the wildness of the woods around him. He knelt, his movements fluid and silent, examining a patch of moss, his head bent in concentration. She felt an almost irresistible urge to approach him, to call his name, to simply be near him. But a strange shyness held her back, a desire to prolong this moment of quiet observation, to savor the sight of him unawares. As if sensing her presence, he slowly straightened, turning his head, his gaze sweeping the trees. His eyes, the color of deep amber, found hers instantly, even through the dappled shadows. A slow, knowing smile touched his lips, a smile that held a hint of amusement, a spark of recognition, and something else, a deep, almost ancient understanding. "I thought I might find you here," he said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to harmonize with the sounds of the forest. He didn't move towards her, but simply watched her, his presence utterly captivating. She stepped out from the ferns, her heart thrumming a frantic rhythm against her ribs. "How did you know?" she asked, her voice a little breathy. He gestured vaguely with a hand. "The woods speak, and you have a certain resonance with them." His eyes lingered on her, tracing a path from her hair, down her face, to the simple green gown she wore. "Green suits you, like a dryad emerging from her tree." A blush warmed her cheeks, a novel sensation. "I was just exploring. This place is magnificent." "It is," he agreed, his gaze still fixed on hers. "Wild, untamed, but with its own delicate balance." He walked slowly towards her then, his steps unhurried, deliberate. Each stride felt like a deliberate draw of a bowstring, tightening the tension between them. When he stood before her, the air crackled with an almost tangible energy. He was taller than she remembered, his shoulders broader, his scent, of pine, earth, and something uniquely masculine, enveloping her. "What were you looking at?" she asked, gesturing towards the spot where he had been kneeling. He knelt again, beckoning her closer. She hesitated for only a moment before stepping forward, drawn by an invisible thread. He pointed to a tiny delicate flower, barely visible amidst the moss. A rare species of woodland orchid. Very particular about its environment, it thrives on the unique conditions of this ancient soil. His finger, long and elegant, brushed lightly against the petals, an almost reverent touch. She knelt beside him, fascinated not just by the flower, but by the quiet intensity with which he regarded it. Her knee brushed lightly against his, and a jolt of electricity shot through her. She quickly withdrew, but he didn't seem to notice, or if he did, he made no sign. "You know a great deal about the woods," she murmured. "I've spent a lifetime learning their secrets," he replied, his voice soft, intimate. He straightened, then offered her his hand. "Come, let me show you more." His hand was warm, strong, and when her fingers intertwined with his, the spark was immediate and potent, a silent promise of connection. He led her deeper into the woods, not along a clear path, but through winding trails known only to him. He pointed out ancient trees, their gnarled branches reaching skyward like the arms of forgotten giants. He showed her hidden springs bubbling from the earth, and clearings where the sunlight pooled like liquid gold. He spoke of the animals that lived there, of the cycles of nature, of the history embedded in the very stones and soil. She listened, captivated, not just by his knowledge, but by the sheer passion in his voice when he spoke of Blackwood. He was not merely an owner, he was a guardian, a part of the living tapestry of the place. He moved with an effortless grace, his body attuned to the rhythm of the forest. She found herself watching him more than the wonders he pointed out, drawn to the subtle flexing of his muscles beneath his clothes, the way his dark hair fell across his forehead when he bent to examine something, the intense focus in his amber eyes. They walked for what felt like hours, the outside world fading into insignificance. It was just them and the ancient, whispering woods. The hand he held in hers remained, a constant, comforting, yet electrifying connection. Her thumb unconsciously stroked the back of his hand, feeling the warmth of his skin, the subtle pulse beneath. They arrived at a hidden glade, a circular clearing bathed in an ethereal light. In its center stood a single, massive oak tree, its branches spreading wide, draped with ancient moss, its roots snaking across the ground like sleeping serpents. It felt sacred, timeless. "This," he said, his voice hushed, "is the heart of Blackwood, the oldest tree on the estate. It has seen centuries come and go." He released her hand, walking towards the tree, his fingers resting lightly on its rough bark. She followed, her gaze fixed on him. He turned to her, a different expression in his eyes now, one of profound connection, and something deeper, more personal. "Every story of Blackwood begins and ends here," he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "And every secret it holds close." He leaned against the trunk, his arms crossed, watching her. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken thoughts and desires. The air vibrated between them, charged with an intensity that made her breath catch. She felt an almost overwhelming urge to bridge the distance, to touch him, to feel the warmth of his skin against hers again. "What secrets does it hold?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. His eyes held hers, a slow, sensual smile playing on his lips. "Perhaps it holds the secrets of connection, of passion, of things long forgotten, now reawakening." His gaze was unnervingly direct, piercing, as if he could see into the very depths of her soul, into the burgeoning desires she hadn't dared to name. He pushed himself off the tree, taking a slow, deliberate step towards her, then another. She stood rooted to the spot, her heart hammering. He stopped inches from her, so close she could feel the heat radiating from his body, smell the intoxicating blend of forest and man. His eyes in the dappled light seemed to glow. "You feel it too, don't you?" he murmured, his voice a low, seductive caress. "This pull, this resonance." She could only nod, her throat suddenly dry. He reached out, his hand lifting slowly, gently. Her breath hitched. His fingers, warm and strong, brushed against her cheek, sending a shiver down her spine. His thumb traced the curve of her jawline, his touch light, exquisitely tender, yet possessing an undeniable power. "You have brought a new light to Blackwood," he said, his voice husky. "A vibrant, captivating energy that this old house has longed for." His gaze dropped to her lips, lingering there for a fraction of a second that felt like an eternity. Her own lips parted slightly, an unconscious invitation. Her eyes fluttered closed as his head began to lower, slowly, deliberately. The anticipation was exquisite, a sweet agony that promised an even sweeter release. She could feel his breath warm on her face, the faint scent of him filling her senses, drowning out everything else. Then, at the last moment, he stopped. His lips hovered inches from hers, a tantalizing whisper away. Her eyes flew open, meeting his. His eyes were dark, burning with an intensity that took her breath away. A playful, yet deeply sensual, challenge danced within their depths. "But a secret," he said, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through her very core, "is only truly revealed when both are ready to share it." He held her gaze, a silent question passing between them. The moments stretched, thick with unspoken desire. She understood. He wasn't simply asking for a kiss. He was asking for a deeper willingness, an acknowledgement of the profound connection that was blossoming between them. She knew with every fiber of her being that she was ready. More than ready. With a soft gasp, she leaned forward, closing the minuscule distance between their lips. The kiss was everything she had imagined, and more. It began gently, a soft press of his lips against hers, tentative, exploratory. Then, as her own lips softened, parting beneath his, a surge of heat ignited between them. His hand moved from her cheek, cupping the back of her head, his fingers tangling in her hair, drawing her closer, deepening the kiss. His lips were soft, firm, tasting of sunlight and wild berries. She responded with an urgency she hadn't known she possessed, her hands rising to grip his shoulders, her fingers digging into the strong muscle beneath his shirt. The world outside the glade faded into a hazy blur. There was only him, only her, only the intoxicating dance of their mouths, the soft sighs that escaped her throat. He angled his head, allowing for a deeper access, and she met him with equal fervor, her tongue shyly exploring the warm cavern of his mouth. A low groan rumbled in his chest, and he pulled her even tighter against him, until there was no space left between their bodies. She could feel the hard planes of his chest against her breasts, the warmth of his body seeping into hers, the undeniable strength of his desire mirroring her own. The kiss became a torrent, a wild, passionate exchange that stole her breath and ignited every nerve ending. She felt herself unraveling, her carefully constructed composure dissolving into pure sensation. He tasted of desire, of ancient earth, of a hunger that matched her own. His fingers combed through her hair, then moved to cradle her neck, his thumbs stroking the sensitive skin just behind her ear, sending shivers down her entire body. When he finally broke the kiss, it was with a reluctant sigh, his forehead resting against hers, his breath ragged against her cheek. Her own lungs burned, her heart thundered. Her eyes were still closed, savoring the lingering taste of him, the exquisite warmth of his body pressed against hers. "Blackwood has truly awakened," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion, his lips brushing against her temple. "And so, it seems, have you?" She opened her eyes, looking up at him through a haze of burgeoning desire. His eyes were no longer amber, but a molten gold, reflecting the fierce passion that still smoldered between them. His lips were swollen, dark, a testament to the intensity of their kiss. "Who are you?" she whispered, the question escaping her lips almost unconsciously. A desperate need to understand the man who had so effortlessly, so completely undone her. He smiled then, a slow, enigmatic smile that promised more mysteries than answers. His hand, still cradling her head, tightened gently. "I am merely a part of Blackwood," he said, his voice a low, resonant hum. "Its guardian?" its memory, and now perhaps its future. His gaze dropped to her lips once more, a silent question, a powerful invitation. The afternoon sun, now higher in the sky, cast long shadows through the glade, but she felt no chill. Only a profound heat, an undeniable yearning. She knew with a certainty that transcended logic, that her journey into the heart of Blackwood and into the depths of her own soul had only just begun. The whispers of the woods had found their voice, and it was his, and she was utterly, irrevocably, lost in their intoxicating song. Her breath hitched, a fragile thing caught between yearning and trepidation. His eyes, the color of ancient forest depths, held hers, a silent pact forged in the heart of the glade. The world beyond them faded into a soft hum, leaving only the thrum of her own pulse, echoing in her ears, answering the wild beat she felt radiating from him. The scent of him, moss and damp earth, wood smoke, and something indefinably wild, like the forest itself, filled her senses, intoxicating and primal. She didn't need words. The invitation in his gaze was a magnetic pull, an undeniable force that drew her forward. Her lips, still tingling from his last touch, parted almost imperceptibly. A silent acceptance. With a soft sigh that was more surrender than sound, she leaned in, her gaze never leaving his, a silent question becoming a passionate affirmation. This time, his kiss was not a tentative exploration, but a deep, unhurried claim. His lips, warm and firm, molded against hers, and she felt a tremor run through her, from the tips of her toes to the roots of her hair. He tasted of the wildness of Blackwood, of sunshine filtered through leaves, of a profound ancient magic. Her hands, almost without conscious thought, lifted to cup his face, her fingers threading into the silken strands of his dark hair, pulling him closer, as if to absorb the very essence of him. He responded instantly, his hand leaving her waist to cup the back of her head, his thumb gently caressing her jawline, sending shivers through her skin. The kiss deepened, becoming a slow, languid dance of discovery. Her mind, usually so analytical and precise, dissolved into pure sensation. His tongue, a soft, insistent whisper, sought entry, and she granted it without hesitation, meeting him with an equal fervor. It was a kiss that spoke of longing, of a knowing that transcended time, of a connection forged long before this sun-drenched glade. When he finally drew back, it was only by a breath, their foreheads still touching, eyes closed. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, her lips swollen and tender, a delicate flush painting her cheeks. She felt utterly exposed, yet fiercely cherished. When his eyes finally fluttered open, they held a depth of emotion that made her own breath catch. A soft smile, a slow, sensual curve of his lips, graced his face. "Elara," he murmured, her name a low rumble that vibrated through her very bones, a sound she hadn't known she was waiting to hear, yet recognized instantly as her own. Her name, spoken by him, felt like a revelation, an unlocking of something deep within her. She didn't question how he knew it, for it felt as natural as the rise and fall of the forest floor beneath her feet. "Kale," she whispered in return, the name forming on her lips as if it had always belonged there, a soft echo of the woods themselves. He reached for her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers, a perfect fit. His touch was warm, grounding, yet infused with an undeniable current of excitement. He squeezed her hand gently, then turned, pulling her deeper into the glade, a silent invitation to explore not just the hidden heart of Blackwood, but the burgeoning landscape of their shared desire. The path beneath their feet softened, giving way to a carpet of vibrant green moss, impossibly lush and velvety. The dappled sunlight filtered through the ancient canopy above, painting shifting patterns of gold and emerald on the forest floor. The air grew heavier, sweeter, imbued with the scent of damp earth, blooming wild jasmine, and something else, something ancient and sacred that hummed beneath the surface of the world. He led her past towering oaks whose branches reached to the sky like supplicants, their bark etched with the wisdom of centuries. A hidden spring gurgled nearby, its crystalline waters whispering secrets to the smooth river stones. The sounds of the outer forest faded, replaced by the gentle rustle of leaves, the distant call of a cuckoo, and the constant soft murmur of the spring. It was as if they had stepped into a different realm, a pocket of time untouched by the hurried world beyond Blackwood's embrace. Their pace was unhurried, a slow, deliberate walk that allowed their hands to remain intertwined, their shoulders occasionally brushing, sending sparks of awareness through her. She felt herself shedding the remnants of her everyday self, peeling back layers of convention and expectation. Here, with him, she was simply Alara, a woman drawn by an irresistible force into a world she had only dreamed of. Finally, they emerged into a small, secluded clearing, ringed by a semicircle of ancient standing stones, their surfaces covered in intricate, swirling carvings, softened by moss. In the center of the clearing, a magnificent willow tree stood, its weeping branches forming a natural, verdant curtain, creating an intimate sanctuary. The air here was alive, charged with a palpable energy, a profound sense of peace mingled with an exquisite anticipation. Cale turned to her, his hands gently releasing hers to cup her face once more. His thumbs traced the delicate curve of her cheekbones, his touch sending a delicious shiver down her spine. "Welcome," he murmured, his voice a low, resonant hum, "to the heart of Blackwood." His eyes held hers, a deep, unwavering gaze that saw beyond her surface, into the very core of her being. She felt seen, truly seen for the first time in her life. "It's breathtaking," she managed, her voice a little breathy, a little unsteady. The beauty of the place, the intensity of his presence, threatened to overwhelm her. He smiled, a slow, tender curve of his lips that sent a wave of warmth through her. "It has been waiting for you." His words, so simple, yet so profound, resonated deep within her. It felt true. Everything about this journey, this man, this glade, felt like a homecoming. She felt a sudden lightness, a liberation from unspoken burdens. With a soft exhalation, she reached up, her fingers tracing the strong line of his jaw, feeling the warmth of his skin beneath her touch. I don't know what I feel," she confessed, her voice barely a whisper. "Lost yet found, afraid yet fearless." He chuckled softly, a rich melodic sound that seemed to blend with the rustle of the willow leaves. "That is the magic of the woods, Alara. It strips away what is not essential, leaving only truth." His gaze softened, intensified. "And the truth for us is here." With that, he slowly lowered his hands, letting them drift down her arms, lingering at her elbows, then her wrists, before finally capturing her hands in his once more. He drew her closer, until their bodies were almost touching, separated only by the whisper of air between them. The heat emanating from him was a palpable thing, a magnetic force that drew her in, promising warmth, comfort, and an exhilarating unknown. His eyes dropped to her lips, and the silent question was there again, more potent now, laced with a shared understanding. She parted her lips slightly, her eyes fluttering closed in anticipation. This time, his kiss was a slow, sensual exploration, a promise of what was to come. It was a kiss that tasted of longing, of pent-up desire, of two souls recognizing their destined path. As their lips fused, his hands left hers to settle at her waist, drawing her flush against him. She felt the firm planes of his chest against her breasts, the hard line of his thighs against hers. A jolt of pure electricity shot through her, igniting a fire in her belly that spread like wildfire through her veins. Her own hands, guided by an instinct she hadn't known she possessed, found purchase on his shoulders, then slid up to entwine around his neck, pulling him even closer, erasing the last vestiges of space between them. The world tilted, dissolved into a symphony of touch and sensation. His lips moved over hers with exquisite tenderness, a slow, deliberate rhythm that stole her breath and stirred her very soul. He kissed her eyelids, her temples, the sensitive skin behind her ear, each touch a feather-light caress that left a trail of goosebumps in its wake. She arched into him, a soft moan escaping her lips, a sound of pure pleasure and burgeoning desire. He pulled back just enough to look at her, his eyes dark with a passion that mirrored her own. "You are beautiful, Alara," he murmured, his voice husky, almost a growl, like the first bloom of spring after a long winter. His words were a balm, a warm embrace that settled deep within her. She felt herself blush, a delicious warmth spreading through her skin. He reached out, his fingers gently untying the ribbon that held her hair, letting the dark cascade fall freely around her shoulders. His fingers threaded through the strands, a tender caress that sent shivers down her spine. "Let go," he whispered, his gaze intense, compelling. "Let the woods claim you, as I wish to." Her heart hammered against her ribs, a wild drumbeat answering the ancient pulse of the forest. She felt an almost overwhelming urge to shed everything, to be completely open, completely vulnerable to him. Slowly, deliberately she reached for the clasp of her cloak, her fingers trembling slightly. With a soft rustle of fabric, it slipped from her shoulders, pooling at her feet like a discarded skin. The cool air touched her bare arms, but the heat emanating from Kale, and from within her, was more than enough to keep her warm. His eyes, lingering on her now exposed shoulders, and the elegant curve of her neck, deepened with admiration. He took a step back, gently leading her towards the base of the weeping willow, its branches forming a natural secluded alcove. The ground beneath was soft with centuries of fallen leaves and thick, velvety moss, a natural bed awaiting their embrace. He knelt first, then extended a hand to her, his gaze unwavering. She took it, her fingers gripping his with a strength she didn't know she possessed. As she knelt before him, their eyes met again, a silent dialogue passing between them, a profound understanding of the journey they were embarking on. His hands, warm and strong, went to the lacings of her tunic. His touch was gentle, reverent, each movement a silent question, an invitation. She watched his face, mesmerized, as his fingers slowly unfastened the delicate ties, one by one. Her breath caught in her throat as the fabric loosened, revealing the soft swell of her breasts beneath the delicate linen of her shift. He paused, his eyes lifting to hers, a silent inquiry. She simply nodded, a fierce wave of desire washing over her, erasing any last vestiges of shyness. He took a deep, steadying breath, then, with a slow, deliberate movement, parted the tunic, revealing the elegant curve of her collarbones, the gentle slope of her shoulders, and the soft rise of her chest. He reached out, his fingers tracing the delicate curve of her collarbone, then drifting lower, over the soft linen of her shift, just above her heart. She shivered at his touch, a delicious tremor that coursed through her. "You are a creature of light, Alara," he murmured, his voice a low, sensual whisper. "And I am drawn to your warmth like the sun to a hidden glade." She leaned into his touch, her eyes fluttering closed, savoring the exquisite sensation. The air in the willow sanctuary seemed to hum with an unspoken promise, a vibrant energy that encompassed them both. She felt a profound sense of rightness, of being exactly where she was meant to be, with the man who had called her name from the heart of the woods. He leaned in, his lips brushing against her temple, then trailing down to her ear. "Let us shed the burdens of the world," he whispered, his breath warm against her skin, sending delicious shivers through her. "And find what lies beneath." With a gentle tug, he helped her shed the tunic, letting it fall silently to the mossy ground. Now she stood before him in only her shift, a thin, soft layer of linen that clung to the curves of her body, hinting at the treasures beneath. Her heart pounded a frantic rhythm against her ribs, a wild, exhilarating beat that echoed the pulse of the ancient forest. He gazed at her, his eyes alight with a mixture of reverence and raw desire. He reached out, his fingers brushing against the soft fabric of her shift, tracing the line of her waist, the curve of her hip. The delicate linen was no barrier to the heat of his touch, which seemed to burn through the fabric and directly onto her skin. She gasped softly, her body arching involuntarily towards his. He then reached for the ties of his own tunic, his movement slow and deliberate, giving her time to watch, to anticipate. Her gaze was drawn to the powerful muscles of his chest, the strong line of his shoulders, the ripple of his arms as he untied the leather thongs. The forest scent of him grew stronger, mingling with a new intoxicating aroma of warm skin and pure masculinity. When the tunic finally slipped from his shoulders, revealing the tanned, sculpted expanse of his chest, she felt a powerful rush of desire. His skin was smooth and warm, dusted with fine dark hair that narrowed to a tantalizing line down his abdomen. He was magnificent. A primal force of nature, perfectly attuned to the wild beauty of Blackwood. Her fingers, almost without conscious thought, reached out, drawn by an irresistible urge to touch him. Her fingertips brushed against his warm skin, feeling the tautness of muscle beneath, the steady beat of his heart. He gasped softly at her touch, his eyes darkening further with passion. He took her hands, bringing them to his lips, kissing her knuckles, her palms, before pressing them against his chest, right over his heart. She could feel its powerful rhythm beneath her fingertips, a strong, steady beat that resonated with her own. "Feel that, Ilara," he murmured, his voice a low, sensual rumble. "That is what you do to me. You awaken something wild, something ancient." She looked into his eyes, her heart swelling with a torrent of emotions she couldn't name. Love, longing, a profound sense of belonging. She leaned into him, resting her head against his bare chest, feeling the warmth of his skin, the comforting strength of his embrace. His arms wrapped around her, holding her close, pressing her soft curves against his hard planes. They stood there for a long moment, simply holding each other, the world outside this verdant sanctuary fading into oblivion. The air was thick with unspoken desires, with the promise of deeper intimacy. The scent of him enveloped her, a potent elixir that made her head spin. He lifted her face gently, his fingers tangling in her hair. His gaze was burning, intense, yet infinitely tender. "Are you ready, my Ilara?" he whispered, the question a soft breath against her lips. She didn't need to ask what he meant. Her body was humming, alive with a yearning that transcended thought. She simply nodded, her eyes wide with a mixture of anticipation and trust. He lowered her gently to the mossy bed beneath the willow, following her down. The soft, cool moss yielded beneath them, cradling their bodies. He propped himself on an elbow, gazing down at her, his eyes tracing every curve, every shadow, every flush on her skin. She felt utterly vulnerable, yet utterly safe, utterly cherished. His hand reached out, his fingers slowly, exquisitely tracing the line of her jaw, then drifting down her neck, over her collarbone, lingering at the delicate lace trim of her shift. The touch was feather-light, yet it sent waves of intense pleasure through her. Her breath hitched, a soft sigh escaping her lips. "So beautiful," he whispered again, his voice thick with emotion. His fingers then began to tease at the simple ties of her shift, slowly, deliberately, as if prolonging the exquisite anticipation. Each knot undone felt like a layer of inhibition melting away, leaving her more exposed, more open to his touch. When the shift was finally loosened, he didn't remove it completely. Instead, he gently parted the fabric, revealing the soft swell of her breasts, the delicate pink of her nipples, already taut and aching for his touch. Her breath caught in her throat, her body trembling with a mixture of shyness and fierce desire. His gaze lingered there, warm and appreciative, before lifting back to meet her eyes, seeking permission. She offered it silently, her eyes dark with longing, her lips parted slightly in invitation. With a soft groan he lowered his head, his lips brushing against the sensitive skin of her décolletage, then slowly, tantalizingly, descending towards her breast. Her body arched, a silent plea for more. His tongue, warm and wet, flickered over one peak, sending a shockwave of pleasure through her that made her gasp aloud. He suckled gently, exquisitely, drawing a soft moan from deep within her throat. Her fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, pressing him more firmly against her. She felt a profound sense of connection, of belonging, as his mouth worshipped her, as his hands gently caressed her sides, tracing the curve of her waist, the flare of her hips. The world outside the willow sanctuary had ceased to exist, leaving only the two of them, entwined in a dance as ancient as the woods themselves. He moved to her other breast, lavishing it with the same slow, exquisite attention, while his free hand slid beneath her shift, finding the soft skin of her inner thigh. His touch was electric, igniting a fiery current that pulsed through her core. She gasped, her hips instinctively arching towards his hand, seeking more. His fingers, warm and knowing, began to explore, tracing the sensitive skin, drawing circles that sent shivers of pleasure through her. He shifted, his body pressing more fully against hers, his hard arousal a delicious weight against her thigh, a clear promise of what was to come. She looked up at him, her eyes clouded with desire, her body aching with an exquisite need. He met her gaze, his own eyes burning with a passion that mirrored and amplified her own. The air crackled around them, thick with the scent of aroused bodies, of musk and desire, mingled with the sweet, earthy aroma of the forest. He leaned down, capturing her lips in a deep, soul-stirring kiss, his tongue mirroring the movements of his fingers, exploring, teasing, promising. Her world narrowed to the sensations he evoked, to the taste of him, the feel of him, the intoxicating scent of him. She was lost, gloriously lost, in the heart of Blackwood, in the depths of his embrace. The journey had indeed only just begun, and she knew with every fiber of her being that she wanted to follow him wherever he would lead, into the deepest mysteries of the forest, and into the profound, uncharted territory of their shared passion. His lips left hers for a breath, tracing a molten path down her jawline, across the delicate curve of her throat, eliciting a shiver that rippled through her core. Her head tilted back, offering him access, her eyes fluttering shut as a soft gasp escaped her. The air around them, though cool, felt charged with an almost visible heat, a magnetic pull that drew their bodies ever closer. His hands, no longer content with just her waist, began to roam, strong and knowing. One slid up her back, pressing her tighter against his chest. The other ventured lower, a feather-light touch over the silken expanse of her thigh, moving deliberately, drawing a trail of fire in its wake. She arched into him, a silent plea, her fingers tangling in the soft waves of his hair, tugging gently as if to root him to her. The delicious friction of their clothes, still clinging to their bodies, became unbearable, a teasing barrier she yearned to shed. She whispered his name, a breathless sound that was half sigh, half question, her voice raw with burgeoning desire. He answered not with words, but with action. His mouth found hers again, deeper, hungrier this time, a slow, sensual exploration that plundered her senses. His tongue mirrored the dance of his fingers, a profound intimacy that spoke volumes of his longing. Her own tongue met his, a playful, passionate duel that left her trembling. She felt the subtle shift in his weight, the increased pressure against her, the undeniable evidence of his own rising passion, and a thrill, primal and exhilarating, shot through her. With a soft groan he pulled back just enough to look into her eyes, his own dark and intense alight with a fierce tenderness. "You are exquisite," he murmured, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through her, "every single part of you." His gaze was a caress, lingering on her parted lips, the flush on her cheeks, the wild sheen in her eyes. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement, he reached for the hem of her blouse. Her breath hitched. The anticipation, keen and sharp, was almost unbearable. Her hands, trembling slightly, rose to meet his, not to stop him, but to assist. Together their fingers fumbled with buttons, a clumsy dance born of urgent desire. When the fabric finally gave way, slipping from her shoulders to pool around her waist, a cool breath of air touched her skin, only to be instantly replaced by the warmth of his hands. He pushed the blouse away, and then, with equal reverence, unclasped her bra. It fell away, revealing her breasts to the soft, dappled light, filtering through the canopy above. A wave of vulnerability, quickly followed by a surge of confidence, washed over her as his eyes devoured her, A slow, appreciative journey that made her nipples pebble and ache. He leaned in, his warm breath fanning her skin, and then, with a soft exhalation, he lowered his head. Her world dissolved into pure sensation as his mouth closed over one aching peak, a gentle suckling that sent exquisite shivers down to her very core. She cried out, a soft, involuntary sound of pure pleasure, her fingers digging into his shoulders, holding on as if to steady herself against the delicious onslaught. He suckled, teased, licked, moving from one breast to the other, making her writhe with a pleasure so intense it bordered on pain. Each touch, each taste, was a promise whispered against her skin, a deeper invitation into the mysteries they were unraveling together. He moved lower, his lips blazing a trail down her stomach, across her navel, eliciting fresh gasps and moans. Her body felt alive, hypersensitive, every nerve ending tingling with a vibrant energy. She felt herself unraveling, piece by piece, shedding not just her clothes, but her inhibitions, her doubts, her very sense of self, leaving only raw, burning desire in their wake. He knelt before her, his strong hands sliding along the delicate curve of her hips, then reaching for the button of her trousers. Her legs felt weak, her knees threatening to buckle, but she remained standing, held upright by the sheer force of their connection. As the denim gave way, and then her underwear, she stepped out of them, letting them drop to the forest floor, a soft rustle of fabric against fallen leaves. She stood before him, completely unburdened, completely exposed, bathed in the filtered sunlight, her body trembling with a mixture of apprehension and ecstatic readiness. His eyes, when they met hers, were full of adoration, a silent testament to the beauty he saw in her. He reached out, his fingers tracing the delicate curve of her inner thigh, sending a jolt of liquid fire through her veins. Then his touch grew bolder, more direct, his skilled fingers finding the swollen heart of her desire. A gasp tore from her throat, as his touch sent a wave of pure, unadulterated pleasure crashing over her. He knew exactly where to touch, how to tease, how to coax her body into an exquisite crescendo of longing. Her hips began to move instinctively, seeking the pressure, the friction, the delicious rhythm he was creating. The sounds she made were no longer whispers but soft cries, primal and uninhibited, echoing faintly in the silent embrace of Blackwood. He rose then, his gaze never leaving hers, his hands sliding up her body, pulling her close until their bare skin met, a shock of warmth and friction that stole her breath. She felt the hard planes of his chest, the taut strength of his thighs, the undeniable readiness of him against her. Her hands found his waist, then his back, exploring the sculpted muscles beneath her fingertips, feeling the tremor that ran through him. "I need you," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion, his lips brushing against her ear, sending shivers down her spine. "I need to be inside you." Her answer was a fervent nod, her eyes shining with tears of longing and anticipation. "Yes," she breathed. "Please, yes." He lifted her then, effortlessly, her legs wrapping around his waist, her arms locking around his neck. She felt herself pressed against the smooth bark of a towering oak, its ancient strength mirroring the steadfast power of his embrace. He entered her slowly, a breathtaking invasion that stretched and filled her, a profound sense of completeness settling deep within her. Her muscles clenched around him, welcoming him, pulling him deeper still. A soft cry escaped her lips, a sound of both pain and exquisite pleasure. He paused, his forehead resting against hers, his eyes searching hers for any sign of discomfort. "Are you all right?" he murmured, his voice laced with concern. She nodded, tears now openly tracing paths down her cheeks, but they were tears of joy. "More than all right," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Perfect." With her assurance he began to move, a slow, deliberate rhythm that quickly deepened, becoming more insistent, more passionate. Each thrust was a journey, pulling them further into the heart of their shared ecstasy. She met him stroke for stroke, her body moving with an instinctual grace she hadn't known she possessed. The world outside them ceased to exist. There was only the rhythm of their bodies, the gasps and moans that mingled in the air, the intense, overwhelming connection that bound them together. The ancient trees seemed to hum with their passion, the very air vibrating with their shared joy. Leaves rustled above, a gentle sigh of approval, as if Blackwood itself was bearing witness to their profound union. She felt a building pressure deep within her, a coil of pure sensation tightening with each powerful thrust. Her breath came in ragged gasps, her nails scoring light trails down his back, her hips rising to meet him with desperate urgency. She cried out his name, a desperate, joyous sound as the climax hit her, a wave of incandescent pleasure that cascaded through her, shaking her to her very core. Her muscles spasmed around him, milking every last drop of sensation, as she clung to him, riding the wave until it slowly, deliciously, receded. Moments later, she felt him shudder, a deep groan rumbling from his chest, as he found his own release, his body tensing, then collapsing against her, his breath coming in ragged gasps. They remained there for a long time, suspended in the aftermath, their bodies still joined, their hearts hammering a frantic rhythm against each other. The air was cool against her damp skin, but she felt only warmth, a profound sense of peace and belonging she had never known. He slowly lowered her, careful and tender, until her feet touched the ground, but he did not release her. He held her close, his arms wrapped around her, his chin resting on her head, his breath a soft caress in her hair. "You are incredible," he whispered, his voice still thick with emotion, his lips brushing her temple. She leaned into him, her entire body feeling liquid and boneless, utterly content. "And you," she murmured back, her voice barely a whisper, "are everything I never knew I was looking for." The sun, now higher in the sky, dappled through the leaves, painting their bare skin with shifting patterns of light and shadow. The forest, which had felt so mysterious and even a little daunting just yesterday, now felt like a sanctuary, a sacred space where their love had blossomed. Slowly, reluctantly, they began to dress, each movement imbued with a new tenderness, a shared intimacy. He helped her with her buttons, his fingers brushing her skin, sending tiny sparks of memory through her. She smoothed his shirt, her gaze lingering on his strong, handsome face, seeing a vulnerability there now, a soft glow in his eyes that had not been present before. "We should head back," he said, though his voice held a note of reluctance, "before the light shifts too much." She nodded, but made no move to leave his embrace. "I don't want to leave," she confessed, her voice soft. "Not yet." He smiled, a gentle, knowing smile that reached his eyes. "We will always come back," he promised, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw. "This place, it's a part of us now, and so are we, a part of it." He led her back through the forest, their hands clasped tightly, their steps lighter than before. The path seemed clearer, the air sweeter, the birds' song more melodious. Every rustle of leaves, every ray of sunlight felt imbued with a new significance, a reflection of the profound connection they had just forged. When they arrived back at the edge of the forest, the cabin nestled beyond the tree line seemed to beckon, a symbol of domesticity and comfort awaiting them. As they walked towards it, she knew with an absolute certainty that her journey into Blackwood had indeed led her to the deepest mysteries, not just of the ancient forest, but of her own heart. She had found not only passion, but a profound and tender love, a belonging that transcended words. That evening, as dusk painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, they sat by the crackling fire in the cozy cabin, wrapped in a comfortable silence. The air was filled with the scent of wood smoke and the lingering aroma of the simple, delicious meal they had shared. He had brewed her a fragrant herbal tea, its warmth seeping into her bones, matching the warmth in her heart. She rested her head on his shoulder, his arm draped protectively around her. The world outside was hushed, the ancient forest settling into its nightly slumber. But inside, a new world had awakened for her. She felt safe, cherished, truly seen. "I never imagined," she began, her voice soft, "that coming here to Blackwood would change everything so completely. He tightened his arm around her, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Sometimes," he replied, his voice a low, comforting rumble. "The greatest discoveries are found in the quietest, most unexpected places, and sometimes the wildness of nature simply helps us find the wildness, the truth, within ourselves." She smiled, her eyes tracing the dancing flames. He was right. The forest had stripped away her pretenses, her anxieties, leaving her open and vulnerable to the profound beauty of his soul, and to the strength of her own. "I'm glad I followed you," she whispered, her hand finding his, intertwining their fingers. "Wherever you lead." He turned his head, his gaze meeting hers, a silent promise shimmering between them. "And you," he responded, his fingers gently squeezing hers. "Always." The fire crackled, casting long dancing shadows on the cabin walls. Outside, the moon began its slow ascent, bathing Blackwood in a silver glow. The journey had begun with a mystery, deepened with passion, and now settled into the profound, comforting certainty of a shared future. She closed her eyes, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her ear, knowing that she was home, truly home, in his arms in the heart of the forest, and in the depths of a love that had only just begun to unfurl its magnificent, timeless story. The adventure, she realized, wasn't just in the pursuit of the unknown, but in the beautiful, enduring discovery of each other. And with him, she knew, every tomorrow would be a new, uncharted, and deeply cherished journey.